and welcome to Made from Humans, How Reality Becomes TV. I'm your host, Andy Dennert, the creator of Reality Blurred and a writer who believes in the power of true stories. Every week I'll take you behind the scenes of reality TV and my writing about it. On this week's episode, Love Island USA's hottest couple are two guys. Is this finally queering up a hetero show, or just queer baiting? Plus, reality TV news you may have missed, and recommendations for some videos you definitely should not. And stick around to the very end for life advice from reality TV, this time from Delta Work. Welcome! Thank you so much for letting me join you, whatever you're doing right now, whether that's taking a walk or driving or doing the laundry or cleaning out cat litter boxes, which I'll be doing after I finish recording this. I'm glad to be here with you and hopefully keep you company for the next half hour or so. Let's dive into Unscripted Updates, where I discuss things from the news. And this week, I just wanted to cover 5 headlines that I want to make sure you haven't missed because they're interesting, useful, and or shocking, I guess. The first, the most shocking of all, the Traitors US Peacock's version has fired Fergus, or Fergus, as Alan Cumming says. And I apologize for that terrible Alan Cumming accent right there. I'm embarrassed already. So yes, the Fergus character on The Traitors was portrayed by an actor who is, of course, not central to the show. What I mean by that is Fergus played Alan Cumming's groundskeeper at the castle. The actor, John Ritchie, revealed that he had not been hired back for the season that just filmed, which the reports are suggesting that that was the civilian season, and then the celebrity season will film a little later. So in any case, Fergus is gone. And that's really too bad because although on a reality TV show, having an actor play a kind of ridiculous over-the-top character who's mostly background and B-roll is not central to the game in any way, it really did add to the flavor of The Traitors US and really give the world a sense of, like not only like that there was something happening here besides just this game using this castle, which of course we all know is a rental by the production, but it also just kind of like, how to develop a kind of relationship for Alan to play off of, and just a lot of funny visual gags that when they used Fergus for various things. So I'm very sorry that, he hasn't been hired back, but in his social media posts about not coming back or not being asked back, he did say, this is John Ritchie, the actor again, "I'm okay with it. Thanks for the support, but I'm genuinely fine with not doing the show again. The last season, so season 4, which filmed last year, was not much fun to make. Won't go into the whys." So don't know what that means. Fergus wasn't really featured that much, but I'm curious what happened, and maybe we'll learn more in the coming weeks or months, but I will miss his presence, even if it's just in B-roll. Next update. Top Chef 24 would be usually starting to film in late August and film into September. That's the usual schedule for Top Chef now. However, Gail Simmons revealed that Top Chef 24 is going to be delayed. And the way she talked about it, saying that she both has her summer back and will have an easier fall when she's on book tour promoting a book that comes out early November, suggests to me that they may not even film until mid-November or later if she's, on book tour, and this show takes 4 to 6 weeks to film depending upon their schedule. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And this came about because Gail was on a podcast and asked about where next season is going to be, and she says usually by now, and this is the end of June 2026, so usually by June she already knows where they're going because they've figured that out and signed up for a location. And the documents I obtained from Top Chef Wisconsin showing the contract between the government agencies that paid to bring the show there, those were all signed in late May of that year. So that absolutely tracks. I wonder if this means they don't actually have a place signed and locked down yet, which is, they might have told Gail that they did, or maybe they just, are obviously like maybe their production cycle hasn't started yet because of this delayed start in filming. So curious to see how all this shakes out, if Top Chef moves later in the season. Kind of a quick little tangent, something else she mentioned, and the link to this story and all these details is in the episode description of your podcast app. So click that for more information. But basically, Gail said that this past season of Top Chef, which Bravo moved to Monday nights and then put after Below Deck, was constantly changing start times and never really consistent throughout the season, which really frustrated, it sounded like, Gail and other people associated with the show. Definitely frustrated me. I know a lot of people on social media were asking about it. But what Gail said is what she's heard from Bravo or people who talk to people at Bravo or NBC Universal is that really that didn't affect it, and they're very happy with the ratings and whatever that is. Of course, ratings are more than just what we, used to call the overnights or what people watch when people watch a broadcast live or on DVR that same day. There's so many more factors that go into a show's financial success or not, or success for a company. But I'm glad to hear that they were happy with it, despite fucking with it and potentially screwing it up for everyone. So I really hope that they can also just figure something out next season, because, your flagship reality competition your only reality competition should actually have a home on broadcast TV, unless you just want to let broadcast TV go completely, which I guess that's what a lot of cable networks are doing anyway. So who knows? Next item of news, Project Runway, coming back soon, announced that they have a new judge, Tyra Banks. So that's going to be a shit show. And looks like this timing of the America's Next Top Model documentary came out, and then they started production on Project Runway a few weeks later. So it's unclear, how much they knew about this doc and just what Tyra seems like in it, which is, a monster and or someone who's just completely unwilling to take any responsibility for the show that she executive produced and says is hers. But of course, everything that happened on it that was bad, she had no knowledge of. So meanwhile, Tyra is also suing Netflix over this documentary. She filed a lawsuit claiming defamation, among other things. I'm actually going through that lawsuit and highlighting things, finding some interesting information. So I'm working on a story about that. So look for that soon. If not this week, probably the very start of next week. Okay, 2 more news items. First up, Netflix is turning Simon Says into a reality TV competition. I don't know why, but I guess we just need some IP, and people know Simon Says. And it's going to be, and I quote, a gauntlet of cunning challenges, strategic mind games, and unexpected pivots, which is exactly what I think of when I think of Simon Says. This is all coming from the production company Bunim Murray, which is responsible for The Real World, the original modern reality TV show, and kicking off everything that followed. Also responsible for some absolute garbage like The Challenge and the just terribleness that is there. So I wrote in my news item about this that I was imagining Simon Says, get a concussion. Simon Says, get drunk and punch someone in the neck. Be kind to each other. So guess which one they're not going to get, or they'll get eliminated on for doing. It's really fun when I just explain the jokes, isn't it? Okay, and then finally, some good news. Without a little spoiler, if you haven't seen the end of the season of The Floor on Fox, I'm not going to spoil the final episode, but I will say that Amazing Race 32 winner James Wallington made it to the final duels. And so you can watch those at the link that's in the show notes, and also see what he said about that whole production, which was filmed in just a week and made lots of friends and connections, and sounds like a really fascinating experience. And again, you can see how he did there. So congrats to James for making it that far. And yeah. Okay. Those were the unscripted updates for now. If you like this feature, me kind of going through some stuff that I've been highlighting in my newsletter, which I will link to in the show notes too if you don't already get that, on Reality Blurred, and then also reporting about, if it's helpful to get these in audio form, let me know, and I will continue to do it. Next up, we are going to Analyzing the Analysis, where I look more closely at a show and or my critique of it. And this week it is Love Island USA, which is in full force right now. I will admit, first of all, that I am not completely caught up. I did some traveling and was at a residential writing workshop at Kenyon College, sponsored by the Kenyon Review, which was a wonderful week of creativity and just being immersed in writing and reading and also trying to keep up my site and other work that I'm doing while still focusing on the writing that we do every single day there and do workshops every single day. So I did not watch much TV except for Top Chef's finale when I was there. And that means I lost track of Love Island USA, and now I just feel like I can't catch up. So I'm trying to watch them, but I just won't pretend that I understand everything that's going on at this moment. This week is also Casa Amor week, so they have brought in all these new people and there's all kinds of drama. And finally, the season has gotten really interesting, or at least more interesting than it was last week. Which brings me to the subject, which is that up until this week and twists and, the drama that has ensued, probably the biggest story to come out of this season was a couple, Zach and Bryce. Two men, just to be clear, and they're what Peacock called bromance in their supercut, which you can watch. I've linked that in the show notes. Basically, they gaze longingly at each other, fix each other's hair in the pool. There's all kinds of like little tender moments between them. And this is all really nice and, maybe just could just be two bros acting like human beings. And because we're not used to hyper masculine men on a dating reality show acting like a human being, that we see this as some kind of special thing. But then basically on Friday's episode, Love Island USA aired a segment where Bryce walks into the bedroom where Zach is in his underwear doing something, and Bryce says, "Girth check," and looks into his pants, and then walks over to Zach, who then leans over, puts his head against Bryce's chest, and looks down his pants as he pulls open his drawstring or, waistband again. And then they both giggle about this, and that's the end of it. And again, maybe just a dumb moment between bros. I had never heard of a girth check before, but also I'm not in my 20s and not a straight guy, so maybe there's something that I've totally missed in the culture. But the interesting part, and there have been a couple of these, is they then later that day, or at least in later that episode, I should say, and we'll talk about this in a moment. So this is just a couple minutes later in the episode's time. They were sitting outside, lounging on a couch together, talking underneath a giant neon sign that says "All the Feels," which is just too perfect for this visual. And they were talking about the couples and kind of analyzing them. And then all of a sudden, Zach says to Bryce, and I quote, "That fucking snake you've got down there." And Bryce is like, "What did you think of that?" And Zach says, "Long. It's nearly fucking my boner, that was. I'm not gonna lie." And then Bryce says, "Really? That was like my semi." And Zach says, "It's good shit." So obviously they're having a conversation about the size of Bryce's penis here. And okay, like this is I guess like not what I'm used to on a reality TV show at all. So I wrote about this and kind of considering what this meant. And I think that there's a lot of possibility here. I mean, like, for all we know, people on Love Island can be bisexual. Bisexual people exist. Maybe they have an attraction. Maybe one of them does. Maybe they're closeted and gay and know it or don't. There's those possibilities. It could just also be that they're extremely comfortable with each other and that their physical and emotional intimacy is something that is so unusual for television that it feels it just feels remarkable. And it's like, of course, it's like, there's the titillating, like, oh my God, they're looking at each other's cocks. Like, but what I found really interesting is that it seemed sincere. And what seemed sincere here, especially in that little exchange, was that Bryce seemed surprised that Zach thought he was bigger than I guess Bryce thought he was. And we get nothing from pop culture usually except messages that are trying to shame men into thinking that their penises are not big enough for whatever reason. And of course, porn plays into that. And, I'm throwing out all these subjects that we could take deep dives and hours of exploration into. And other people, podcasts, books have done so. So I realize I'm kind of like skimming across many surfaces here as I'm talking. But the fact that he seems surprised and kind of like, oh, like I wondered where that insecurity came from, or where, if this is just a conversation between two friends who are comfortable enough talking about their genitalia with each other, that's interesting in that they are able to kind of like just do that and not feel ashamed about it. And I think that while sure it'd be really fascinating for Love Island to actually cast bisexual people or gay people or non-binary people or gender non-conforming people into the mix and let people couple up in various pairings, because that would just only increase the drama, as we saw on that one season of MTV's Are You the One that had such a cast. Generally speaking, we have just a glut of dating reality TV shows that are just pushing this idea of quote unquote traditional marriage, which is so ironic that it's traditional marriage in these like completely, non-traditional and situations that really don't do a lot for promoting traditional values, like Love is Blind, where people get engaged hours after meeting each other through a wall just so they can actually see each other. They decide to get engaged to be married, which is absurd. Or The Bachelor, which always has to work toward a proposal because that's the end all be all in these relationships. So it's sort of like reality TV is kind of like constantly on this one message. And that's why this Love Island is obviously like frivolous and dating and kind of hooking up and just, much more frivolous than these other shows that kind of hold marriage up as their end game. So I think that's one of the reasons why Love Island is popular. But it's also interesting to break that formula and see what happens when you have actual emotional and physical intimacy between men inside this context, and that they're comfortable with and not ashamed of. Again, whether it's romantic or sexual doesn't matter, because what we're seeing is actual like emotional comfort with each other to be able to have these conversations. There's clearly physical touching, and is that affection? I mean, only they know. And that's, of course, one of the problems with talking about any of this, is that we're seeing this edited version of the show. We don't know what people are thinking. We don't know what they're attracted to. Obviously, we just know what they tell us, and then what the editors and producers and network decide to show us and how they decide to show it to us, whether they cut around things and kind of like create their own version of reality, or they just kind of, give us some highlights that reflect what's actually going on there. So we really don't know. So we're ultimately reacting to an edited product. And this is what I find so interesting about reality TV, is we have this piece of art that is constructed, and all of these variables are produced and have layers of artificiality in them. And it is yet a thing that then people respond to, people get mad about, people get excited about. And those are also real people who've done the things that we're seeing them do. And whether or not it's accurate for reasons of editing and producing is another question, and sometimes is a completely unknowable thing. We do know that the editors are including this in the footage. They are showing this to their audience. Why are they doing that? Are they doing that just to get the gays like me excited and just try to get some headlines out of a boring season? Are they doing this because they are genuinely rooting for these two guys and see a lot more than we do and think that there's something there and they can't wait for it to come to fruition? And so they want to make sure they lay the groundwork. Of course, the editors or producers can talk to us about those things. And a lot of the interviews that I do, I'm kind of trying to get to some of those ideas with cast members, with producers, seeing what they have constructed. But with Love Island right now, we're in this place of kind of not knowing. Anyway, that brings me to just thinking about what I wrote about the show and essentially arguing that, and I'll quote myself here at the end of the piece, there may not be romantic love between Zach and Bryce, and yeah, probably not, but seeing two men so comfortable with each other, emotionally and physically, is novel and thus far more interesting than the typical Love Island USA opposite sex sloppy face hugging. Which I wrote about too, just the tons of kissing this season, which the producers have basically like made the entire first episode's challenges all about kissing just to like get the couples or get the cast members sucking face really fast. Anyway, after I wrote this, one of Reality Blurred's community members who often comments thoughtfully on stories and things that are going on in stories and shows, Gerald McClanahan, wrote a series of 2 comments, which I'll link to in the show notes because I'm not going to read them in their entirety, and you can go do that. But I want to quote a little bit from what he said because it made me think and question, and I appreciate his perspective. This is one of the things I love doing about this work, which is I see something on TV, I see this product, I analyze it, I tell you what I think about it, I put my evidence out there, and then see if people agree, see if they get a different read from it. And Gerald has a different read, so here's what he wrote, again in part. We all know it's queerbaiting. This show is so aggressively hetero-performative that this feels and comes off as very editor-driven. But hey, let's throw in some homoeroticism as a bright, shiny object to distract the eye from the dullness of the season so far. Interesting that this is being performed between 2 white guys, because among various audiences, that specific demographic is tolerated, fetishized, and can always be explained away as just silly fun. No harm, no foul, just 2 bros being bros. And Gerald wrote, it's strenuous, which I appreciated that. And in the follow-up comment, Gerald added, and just read from this one more time, this is Gerald writing again. As a gay man, I feel it's just a tired editing trope to trot out because it never feels like it's about genuine discovery or self-enlightenment, about the true fluidity of sexual attraction. It always feels stunty and kind of a cheeky joke that's unintentionally dismissive of male-male sexuality. So I appreciate that, and I really think that that's a good point. And for some reason, this did not feel stunty to me. Like, sure, including it in the episodes is absolutely, I agree that it's editor driven, but it didn't feel the same jokey. I mean, maybe the giggle when they're peeking in Bryce's pants, that was a little bit of that, but the conversations just felt more real and raw to me. Maybe I'm just being played. Maybe the editing has won me over. Maybe I'm looking for something that is not really there, or just, you know, grabbing at like the pieces that we've been given. Or maybe there is something. But I appreciate that Gerald's pointing out that there's a long history of reality TV shows doing versions of this, and also white men, especially, and young white attractive men who can get away with it, basically saying that they can, you know, flirt and be stupid about it. And it's, you know, they would never actually, it's like, you know, it's the no homo thing, which is obnoxious to begin with. So where will this go? I don't know. I'm excited to see if something actually, like when they come out of the Love Island experience, if they talk about this, if we get any more information. But for now, we should talk more about it and kind of place it in this context like Gerald is doing. And if you have thoughts about it, I would love to hear whether you agree with me or Gerald or neither of us or both of us. Share your thoughts on Reality Blurred in the comments, or just send me an email. Okay, on to recommendations, where I share things that are bringing joy and entertainment into my life. 3 social media videos for you this week, just kind of short, quick, fun things. The first are a series of Love Island parodies by an actor named Bowman Martinez Reed. I've linked to them in the show notes. I don't want to say much more except he plays the part of multiple Islanders and also does the music, and it's a spot-on parody that is really funny. Next up is a video called The Hidden Mics of The Price is Right. And this comes to us from Dallas Taylor, who has interviewed the broadcast mixer for The Price is Right, whose name is Henry. I paused there because I'm not going to try to pronounce Henry's last name. But anyway, you get to see all of Henry's work behind the scenes of The Price is Right to capture audio. And it's really interesting, not just actual placement of mics, like there's some hidden mics between chairs in the audience, but they put those at a level to capture applause. So they're getting real audience applause. Also interesting that I found that where the contestant row, oh my gosh, I'm losing my Price is Right terminology here, where the contestants stand as they're bidding, there's speakers there so they can hear Drew Carey, they can hear each other as they bid, but that's also not like the mix that they're getting is not the same thing that we're hearing at home. So the audience can be quite loud. So that's why they get to hear each other, even though they're standing next to each other. But they're feeding a special mix into those speakers and then obviously giving us a different mix at home. And there's all kinds of other fun things in this video. So give it a watch just if you love the little behind the scenes of, how we get sound on a game show. And then finally, speaking of sound, there's a great remix of the Parks and Recreation opening titles using Widow's Bay material. If you haven't watched Widow's Bay yet, don't watch this, but do watch Widow's Bay. It's fantastic. It's on Apple TV. It's just an amazing show, like horror comedy, really, really, really funny sometimes, and really, really scary at sometimes too. The creator of that show, Katie Dippold, has been a writer on shows, including Parks and Recreation. So it's kind of fun mashup of two of her worlds. And if you've seen Parks and Rec and Widow's Bay, it's just a delight to watch this video. So give it a shot. Okay, that's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to send me your feedback, questions, and thoughts. And if you're in a 5-star mood, tap those in your podcast app of choice. Your ratings and reviews really help me out. Our theme song is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. And this episode is by me, Andy Dennert, and is copyright 2026 by Reality Blurred LLC, which is also me. You can find me at realityblurred.com and andydennert.com. I'll leave you today with life advice from reality TV, this time from Drag Race star Delta Work, who, on her podcast and in a video that I will link to, reads a letter from a production company, or a series of email messages actually, inviting her to make an appearance for $150. And Delta has a strong reaction to this, as she so should, and I'm glad that she shared that actual detail in the letter. But what I think is great life advice is the way Delta responds with such force here to her value as an artist and to not being taken advantage of. So here is Delta Work responding to that production company's offer of $150.
It's definitely the appearance fee. And I definitely would not recommend any drag queen reduce themselves to working for that type of money. I think the reason production companies come to drag entertainers with this type of offer is because you see what we do as a hobby, and you feel that we should be grateful for the exposure. The last thing I need is exposure. I need compensation and facilitation.